I remember the sound before I remember the pain. The echo of gunfire rang across the open plains, louder than the pounding of my own heart. My breath came in ragged bursts as I ran, wetting lace tearing against sagebrush and briars. The sun was sinking behind the mountains, painting the sky in streaks of blood red, and it felt as though the heavens themselves bore witness to my desperation. I had been promised to a man I never loved. A wealthy rancher, older than my father, crueler than the desert wind. My family called it security, but I called it a sentence. And when I found the courage to flee, I didn't expect his men to follow me with rifles. One of their bullets grazed me, tearing through my shoulder. That white dress, once heavy with lace and expectation, bloomed red as I stumbled into the wilderness. By the time I saw him, I was half conscious. A lone figure on horseback, silhouetted against the dying sun. He rode toward me with the steady rhythm of a man who feared nothing, dust rising beneath his horse's hooves. I remember thinking maybe this was the angel of death, come to finish what the bullet had started. But when he dismounted, the only thing I saw was his eyes. Deep, steady, and quiet, like the earth itself. Without a word, he caught me before I collapsed, his arms strong and grounding, smelling faintly of leather and smoke. He didn't ask who I was. He didn't ask why blood soaked my dress. He just said softly, "You're safe now," and lifted me into his saddle. When I woke, I was lying on a rough-hewn bed inside a small cabin. The air smelled of wood smoke and pine. My shoulder throbbed, wrapped tight in a bandana that was not my own. He sat at the edge of the fire, sharpening a knife with slow, deliberate strokes. For a moment, I thought he hadn't noticed me stirring until he spoke. "Water's by your side. Drink." His voice was steady, low, like the hum of distant thunder. I took the cup, my hands trembling. He didn't press me with questions, though I could feel the weight of his curiosity in the silence. Instead, he tended the fire, the glow lighting the sharp lines of his jaw, the scars that whispered of his own battles. Days passed, and I learned his name was Caleb. A cowboy by trade, a wanderer by choice. He didn't live for wealth, or for anyone's approval, just for the open trail, his horse, and the horizon that never ended. And though I never told him the whole story, not then, he seemed to know enough. He saw the way I startled at the sound of horses approaching in the distance, the way I flinched at shadows near the window. He never pushed. He simply stood a little closer when the wind howled through the cracks, or placed an extra log on the fire when the nights turned cold. One evening, I asked him why. Why he'd taken me in, bleeding and half dead, without asking for anything in return. He looked at me for a long moment, the fire reflecting in his eyes. Then he said, "You don't leave someone in the dirt to die, not out here. Not ever." It was the simplest truth I'd ever heard. But safety on the frontier is never more than borrowed time. One night, as the coyotes sang under the silver moon, we heard the thunder of hooves. My past had come for me. Men in white hats and dark coats rode hard, rifles gleaming in the moonlight. I froze, terror rooting me to the cabin floor. Caleb didn't hesitate. He pressed his revolver into my hand, cool, heavy, foreign in my palm, and whispered, "If they find you, you fight. But they won't. Not while I'm here." The way he said it, steady, unshaken, I almost believed him. The night blurred into gunfire and smoke. Caleb fought like the land itself had given him strength, calm, precise, relentless. I remember crouching by the hearth, clutching that revolver, praying the walls would hold. When silence finally fell, the only sound left was the crackle of the fire and my own heartbeat hammering in my chest. He stood in the doorway, his chest rising heavy, blood streaking his arm where a bullet had grazed him. But his eyes, those steady, unbroken eyes, were fixed on me. "You're safe," he said again. Just those two words, and I crumbled. I never went back to the life that chased me. That white dress, that name I was meant to take, belonged to a woman who had died in the desert the night I ran. With Caleb, I found something new, not just protection, but freedom. We rode together beneath the endless sky, two souls untethered, bound only by the quiet understanding we shared. He never asked for details I wasn't ready to give. And I never asked about the scars he carried, inside or out. All I knew was this: in the vast, unforgiving land where every dawn was uncertain, I had found someone who didn't see me as a burden, or a bargain, or a bride to be bought. He saw me as a woman. A living soul. And sometimes, love doesn't begin with words or promises. Sometimes, it begins with silence, with a cowboy's arms catching you before you fall, with a man who doesn't ask a single thing, except that you stay alive. That night, I thought I was running from death. But looking back, I know the truth. I was running straight into the only life I was ever meant to have.